Philippine President Ferdinand Jr. is seeking support from Congress for the granting of amnesty to rebels who have returned from armed insurgencies in the country's south. He says efforts by the government to reintegrate these former fighters into society have so far proven effective, and that the Philippines is at a point in its history when, quote, the armed struggle has evolved towards peace and development. He adds amnesty is required to sustain the gains won so far in a decades-long fight against the insurgents, known as the Moro Islamic Liberation Front. Mr. Marcos, in his State of the Nation address, also addressed the country's economic performance. He pointed out that inflation had been the single largest problem, and while significant challenges still lie ahead, the economy is on the right track.
Inflation rate is moving in the right direction. From 8.7% in January, our inflation has continued to ease up in all regions, settling now at 5.4% for June. On matters of the economy, there are many things over which we have no control. But over those where we do have control, we are doing everything we can.
Mr. Marcos said price pressures, especially on critical commodities, are expected to ease further by the end of the year. To keep consumer prices in check, he noted the government aims to increase local food production. Our farming accounts for around 10% of the Philippines' economic output. Public sentiment towards Mr. Marcos took a hit after inflation levels surged to a 14-year high during his first year in office. And for more, Berna Bernal joins us live from Manila. Berna, we know protests broke out earlier ahead of Mr. Marcos's address. What has the reaction been like since he finished his speech?
Well, mixed reactions from people I spoke to here who tuned into that State of the Nation address, the second such speech delivered by Philippine President Ferdinand Marcos Jr. to a joint session of Philippine Congress inside that plenary hall in the House of Representatives, just a few kilometers from where we are in this multi-lane highway where various protests were also conducted simultaneous to the address. One of the reactions in relation to the way he wanted to address inflation in the Philippines, which he said will be at 2.9% by 2024, is that a lot of the reforms that he has in mind, structural reforms, are in relation to the business sector instead of the labor sector. Let's hear this reaction now.
We are not so confident about the control of prices as long as we are import dependent and there's no support for the agricultural and development of our industries. And in the discussion during the SONA, the President was talking more on new taxes, ease of doing business, but he said none on easing the burden of workers.
Meanwhile, supporters of the president, who also had a separate program along this highway, said that they hope the president will fulfill his campaign promise of bringing down the price of rice to 20 Philippine pesos, or around 37 US centavos per kilogram. And the price of rice in status quo is around double that campaign promise of his. But there were high expectations in terms of the agriculture sector, precisely because President Marcos Jr. concurrently sits as the agriculture secretary. And in that respect, he said that he intends to boost agricultural production and the Philippines' agricultural supply chains through modernization and through mechanization. Now, finally, just in terms of water security, the president also urged Congress to pass a law that would create a Department of Water Resources Management, because a lot of the institutions in the water sector in the Philippines are fragmented, and it has been a challenge to bring them together in one room.
Another area in which President Marcos is urging support from Congress is he wants them to grant amnesty to rebels who have returned from a decades-long fight against insurgents. He considers that progress that has been made and gains that must be, I suppose, sealed in by granting this amnesty. Explain to us why that matters so much.
Well, the Philippines is battling one of Asia's longest-running, if not the longest-running communist insurgency, dubbed the New People's Army, specifically Philippine troops on the countryside. Now, in southern Philippines as well, there is an ongoing peace process between the Philippine government and the Philippines' largest Muslim rebel group, the Moro Islamic Liberation Front, and a 2014 peace deal led to the creation of a southern Philippine Muslim-majority autonomous region in Mindanao called BARM. And that peace process is ongoing in the sense that ex-combatants are in the process of laying down their arms in exchange for civilian life. And of course, there's an economic package attached to that. And while that deal was actually signed during the presidency of the late former president Benigno Aquino III, and one could say that the Aquinos and the Marcoses are de facto political families, Mr. Marcos did acknowledge that a strong and solid rule of law will be the basis for the country's transformation. And it's a very fragile process right now because the MILF, that rebel group in transition to civilian life, recently raised the issue of Philippine troops raiding certain areas in their region and in the process killing some MILF members. So that fragile process seems now to be addressed, or at least Philippine President Marcos Jr. feels that this could be partly addressed by a more expansive amnesty program, perhaps targeted not only to the MILF, but also other factions operating in southern Philippines.
Thanks for that. Bernard reporting live to us there from Manila.